What's up? This video is going to be my labor and delivery story. I did post a labor and delivery vlog, but this is going to be the story because in the vlog I was obviously going through a lot and I wasn't able to fully go into detail of what was going on. So this is going to be like all the dirty details of what happened during my labor and delivery, and it was honestly pretty traumatic. So yeah, I guess I'm just gonna get right into it. If you guys have been following me on my journey on social media, not necessarily on YouTube because I didn't really update at the very end of my pregnancy, but I was updating on all my social media. So if you were following me on there, you would know that I had a pretty hard time the last couple weeks of my pregnancy. I was so huge and so uncomfortable. I will post a picture of how big my belly was on the screen, but I was ginormous and I wanted to be induced so badly. I was overdue, and I ended up going to 41 weeks and 2 days is when she was born. And I know it's normal to go overdue, but I just knew deep down that like my baby was big, and I was like worrying about her being big because my belly was so big, obviously, and I was just so huge and over it, and I just really couldn't do it anymore. I went to my 41-week appointment and I was like, okay, look, like I can't do this anymore. She's not coming. She hasn't even dropped. I had made no progress. So when I got to 40 weeks, I had to start doing non-stress tests because that's just standard procedure to make sure you have enough fluid and that the baby is doing okay and that you can like continue the pregnancy safely. And my OB and hospital, they don't do anything about inductions until 41 weeks, or that was the impression I was under. So I was going to my non-stress test. I went to the first one and everything was good. I was hoping that I would be induced like that Friday because this was on like a Tuesday, I think. So I went in and everything ended up being fine. Baby looked good, had plenty of fluid, and she moved a ton during the actual test. So that was all good, and they told me to schedule another appointment for that Friday. And I was honestly like really upset because I wanted to be induced on Friday because I was gonna be 41 weeks that day. But anyways, I just set the appointment because I had my OB appointment that Thursday, and I was hoping that maybe he would just schedule the induction and I maybe wouldn't have to go to that appointment. So I just scheduled it anyways, went home. Previously at 37 weeks, my baby was measuring at 7 pounds, 8 ounces. And I was worried about that because my mom was unable to have me at 42 weeks and I weighed 7 pounds, 1 ounce. So I was just really scared that my baby wasn't going to be able to fit through my pelvis because she hadn't dropped yet or anything. I had been worried during my pregnancy about my blood sugar because I barely passed the glucose test. I failed the first time and barely passed the second time. So I was being careful because I still felt like I might have had it, gestational diabetes. So I was worried about that going overdue, and my OB, I never got along with him my whole pregnancy, which sucks. He was never on the same page as me. When I was concerned about things like that, he just like brushed it to the side and didn't really make me feel any better about my concerns. So yeah, that wasn't good, but anyways, you get the point. I was worried about being overdue. So the night before I went to my OB appointment, I ended up having to go to the emergency room. I woke up that morning and I had a raging headache. It was so bad and I was really nauseous, and I had swollen hands, swollen feet, really bad. My face was super swollen, which it was anyways, but it just looked worse. Those are signs of having high blood pressure, which is a sign of having preeclampsia. And also that comes hand in hand with gestational diabetes, which I was afraid I had, even though my doctor swears I didn't have it. I went to CVS, bought a blood pressure monitor to check myself, since like my OB was never really concerned about anything. I knew that if I called, he would just say, oh, that's normal, like he always does. So I went to check for myself. So I bought a blood pressure monitor, took my blood pressure, and it was pretty high for me personally, because my blood pressure was always a certain amount, and then when I took it, it was a lot higher than that, but it wasn't in the danger zone yet. So I called my OB office and I told them what my blood pressure was, and I asked, is that normal for me? Because I feel like I remember it being a lot lower throughout my whole pregnancy, and now all of a sudden it's a lot higher. So they looked at my charts, and just the nurse was like, yeah, that's high for you, so you should probably go to labor and delivery triage and just get checked out to make sure everything's okay, especially since you're having the headache and the nausea and swelling as well. So Alex and I went into that night, and they hooked me up to the monitors, and I did have high blood pressure. At that point, it was even higher. It was like in the 140s, which is starting to get to the danger zone. Like anything over 140 is considered high. I was there just being monitored. I had the blood pressure monitor going off like constantly. They came in and told us, you know, we're gonna do all these tests to make sure like if you have preeclampsia or not, but you are probably not going home without a baby. And Alex and I were like, what? Like, we didn't have anything with us. We didn't even have the car seat with us. Like, we didn't have our hospital bags. We had nothing. And we just weren't expecting that. Like, I don't know why. I just felt like they were just gonna send us home because it was, you know, like, too good to be true. I don't know. So they did all the tests, and they even gave me the IV. Like, they put it in. They didn't hook it up to anything, but they put it in case I was transferred to labor and delivery. And they just kept getting our hopes up, being like, yeah, like, you're probably staying and all this. Well, they ended up sending me home. So they came in and they were like, yeah, we're sending you home. Blood work came back normal, and now your blood pressure is regulated. So just go home. If you have any more symptoms, you can come right back. So I went home and I was freaking crying in the car because I just wanted this baby out so bad. Like, I would do anything. I was desperate. I went to my OB appointment the next day, and I was freaking begging this man to induce me. My mom was there with me, and we were just begging him because I was just so worried. My baby, I like had a feeling she was really big and I wasn't gonna be able to have her naturally the longer we waited. She was measuring 7 pounds, 8 ounces at 37 weeks, and at this point I was 41 weeks the next day. But everyone kept telling me like, oh, those aren't accurate. There's no way your baby is that big. Like, you're just big because you're such a small person and all this stuff. But like, I just had that instinct that my baby was gonna be big. I was telling everyone like, this baby is big. I'm not gonna be able to have her naturally. When I asked this man to induce me, because when I was at the emergency room the night before, they asked me, when's your induction scheduled for? And I said, I don't have one scheduled. And they were like, what? You're turning 41 weeks in like 2 days. Like, you should have your induction scheduled because we don't let people go over 41 weeks at this hospital. And I was like, what? Like, my OB hasn't talked about any of this with me. They were like, yeah, definitely talk to him at your appointment tomorrow because he needs to get this figured out. So at my appointment, I'm thinking, okay, he's just gonna schedule me. Well, no, he decides to be a condescending, rude douchebag, okay? When I'm asking him to induce me and asking about like, when can we schedule an induction, he is acting like I'm acting entitled just because I want to be induced when I'm supposed to be for the hospital. He said things like,
you don't get like a free pass to being induced. There's a long list. Like, you don't get to just cut people and be induced.
And I was like, what do you mean there's no free pass to getting induced? Like, this isn't a free pass, sir. I'm over 41 weeks tomorrow. The hospital said that you are the one that's supposed to induce me. Like, you're supposed to set the induction date. And he was like,
no, we don't do that. I don't do that. That's not my job.
and I was just so confused and like annoyed. But then at the end of my appointment, I went to go out to the lady that you check out with, and she said, okay, he's gonna try to schedule you an induction, but he does want us to set a 42-week appointment. And I was like, a 42-week appointment? I will not be at that, okay? I'm not going that long. That's not even healthy at this point, because I personally thought my baby was even farther along than that. And I think I was right. She always measured ahead, and in the very beginning, I just didn't think it made sense, the dates at all. So I was just so worried, because I was like, oh my gosh, like I could be 42 weeks at this point when I'm 41 weeks. That's like me going to 43 weeks. I don't think so. She said that they would call me the next day if I was able to get an induction, and I honestly didn't even believe that he was gonna call, because he's just that kind of OB. He's like 85 or 86 years old, and he just was never nice to me. I feel like he doesn't like me for some reason, I don't know. But I got home that night and I was like calling the hospital, and I asked him, you know, my OB said it's not his job to schedule the induction, so I'm wondering if that's true. Like, who am I supposed to contact to be induced, because I am not going any further in this pregnancy. And everyone I talked to, because I got transferred a bunch of times, were like, no, like you're not supposed to go over 41 weeks. He is supposed to schedule your induction. There must be some kind of misunderstanding. They were telling me that I must have misunderstood him, and I was like, no, I didn't misunderstand him. He scheduled me a 42-week appointment for next week. And they're like, 42 weeks? Like, no, like you can't go that long. And I was just getting so irritated, because on top of everything, I'm like having pregnancy hormones, and I'm just like so pissed. I'm like raging. I decided to just let God do his plan, and whatever was gonna happen was gonna happen, and it was out of my control at that point. So the next day, luckily, I got a call from the OB office saying that I could go in for an induction that night at midnight, and I was so excited, but they still wanted me to go to my last non-stress test that day. So I did. I went to the non-stress test. Everything looked good again. But that evening when we got home, I got a call from the hospital saying we had been bumped. They didn't have any beds available for that night. But I fully understand that. Like, obviously inductions are not priority. People who are in active labor are priority, but still, like, you know, it sucked. But the next day they said they would call at noon and let me know if I could come in yet. So at noon, they still did not have room the next day, and I was just like, when is this going to happen? And they told me they would just call me when they had a bed available, and we got the call, I think around 5 p.m., and they were like, hey, do you want to come in and start trying to have your baby? And I was like so stoked. I was like, yes, dude, I've been waiting forever, like 10 million years. And so Alex and I were super excited. By this point, we did have the car seat in the car and our bags already and in the car. So we were like so nervous, so excited to get the show on the road. So we leave and we get to the hospital around 6, I want to say. When we got there, it was like a quick process. They like got us in our room so fast and got me hooked up to my IV within like the first few minutes of being there, and got my questions all done and all that stuff. Oh, and which, by the way, I forgot to mention that during all of Friday, I was having really strong contractions, but I had those my whole end of my pregnancy, like the whole 3rd trimester. I had very strong Braxton Hicks contractions, to where sometimes I thought I was actually going into labor. They would get really regular and stuff like that, but then at all my OB appointments, I wouldn't have progressed at all. And so on Friday, I was having the strongest contractions I've ever had, and at my NST test, they were like, okay, like if you're contractions stay like this, you might just be having a baby on your own, and you might end up going in regardless of if they have room available or not. But they didn't get too unbearable. I was having them, but they never got too bad to where I felt like I needed to go to the hospital, so we waited until they said we could come in. At the NST test, my contractions were like going off the monitor, like they were really big. So when they hooked me up to the monitor at the hospital when I was being induced, I was still having contractions regularly, and they were pretty big, and they were like asking like, can you feel that? And I was like, yeah, they hurt, but they're not bad. It's just uncomfortable mostly. So the nurse checked me, and she said I was 1 centimeter dilated. And I was just happy to even hear that, because these whole last few weeks I was hearing,
nope, cervix is closed, tight and high, baby is not engaged.
So she checked me and said, you're 1 centimeter. So I was like, wow, okay, so these contractions actually have been doing a little something. So she said she was gonna contact my OB and see if he wanted me to do a cervix ripener or a balloon. She asked him and he said to start me with the balloon. But then when the OB who was on call came in to put the balloon in, he checked me, and this was like the most painful freaking thing. I would almost say this was just as bad as labor. He ended up being able to strip my membranes, so he did, and it hurt so bad. I don't know why, but I like freaking was like, ow, ow. And then when he took his hand out, it was like covered in blood. And Alex was just like, okay. And that OB was like, no, she is like a good like 2 to 3 centimeters. Like, I would say she's like 3 centimeters right now, so we don't need to do the balloon. Let's just start her right on Pitocin. And I was like so excited about that. Like, what? My body did that on its own? But yeah, so they hooked me up to Pitocin, and everything was going good. I was having contractions, and they weren't that painful. So I was just like watching a movie, as you would see in the vlog, and we ended up trying to get some sleep, because while it was still bearable, I wanted to get some sleep before I was in like extreme pain. So we went to bed, and they let me have the Pitocin going. They kept turning it up and turning it up, and I was totally fine once I was at like the maxed out level, and I was sleeping through them fully. Like, I was like totally sleeping for a couple hours, and then they came in, turned on the lights at 3 a.m. I want to say, and they were like, okay, we're gonna break your water. I had been there for like 9 hours at this point. Nothing was really happening. They checked me, I was still 3 centimeters dilated. So the OB was like, we're gonna break your water and get things going. Ew, my voice. He broke my water, which was the weirdest sensation ever. It was like so warm, and like so much was coming out. It was disgusting, to be honest. Like, I hated it. I hated it. Like, I hated the feeling of it. Then I felt like I had to pee, so I got up like right after they broke my water, which was a mistake, because then the water just started pouring out. Like, it was pouring out all over my socks, all over the floor. I'm like walking to the bathroom, and it's like pouring out as I'm going to the bathroom. And then they like monitor your pee in this little container that's in the toilet. And like, I sat down, and that thing like was overflowing with my water, which is disgusting. And it was like so gross. It smelled like throw up to me, and I was like so nauseated from it. It was almost immediate after they broke my water that my contractions got so intense, you guys. Like, when people told me like Pitocin makes your labor a lot more intense than it normally would when it's natural, like that's pretty common for that to happen, I did not understand what they meant by how intense, but I wanted to die. It was so bad. It was like instant too. Like, they broke that water, and there was no cushion anymore for the contractions, and I was dying. I was yelling, and I could not get comfortable anymore, obviously. I was laying in the bed, shaking my leg, trying so hard to get through these contractions, and Alex was like, are you okay? And I was not okay. My contractions were like 30 seconds apart at one point, which is when I was like, I need the epidural. I can't do this. I need an epidural. And I called the nurse, and I was like, I need an epidural. Like, this is so horrible. It's so intense with the Pitocin turned all the way up, and then like getting my water broken. It was just like too much at once. So she came in and was like, we can't give you one until you're at least 4 centimeters dilated, so I'll check you and see. And she checked me, I was still 3. So she offered to give me a shot of fentanyl, and I just said, give me anything. Like, I was like wanting to rip my body out of my skin. And so she gave me the fentanyl, and that was a terrible mistake. It did not take away the pain at all. It just made me feel really drunk, and I threw up, and I had to freaking throw up in one of those little bags, and Alex had to throw it away for me. Yeah, it just made me really sick, and then it went away. Within like 30 minutes, I'd say, it got out of my system already. I was just in so much pain, and it wasn't doing anything. So around 6 a.m., she checked me again, and I was 4 to 5 centimeters. So I was able to get the epidural. So the anesthesiologist came in, luckily, like right away. And getting the epidural really hurt for me. I sound like a baby. I have a very high pain tolerance, you guys. Like, it's very high, but that was painful. All of this was very, very painful and intensified. Like, being induced is no freaking joke. But when he gave me the epidural, like, getting the needle put in and stuff like that didn't hurt. When he actually injected me, it was so painful. I don't know why, but when the medicine came in, it felt like my leg, like my right leg, was getting electrocuted, and it really hurt. But that was like the only part that hurt. Getting the needle and everything, I didn't really feel that. 30 minutes to an hour later, I couldn't even feel my contractions. I felt so much better. I could see the contractions on the screen, and I wasn't feeling them, just the pressure. But then around like 8 or 9 a.m., I started feeling pain again. I was sleeping and I woke up because I was feeling the contractions again. I was starting to feel the pain, and it gradually was getting worse and worse, and like really fast. So I called the nurse in, and I was like, my epidural is like wearing off or something. So she pushed the button on it, and I wasn't able to push the button at my hospital. I know some people are allowed to push it themselves, but I couldn't. So she pushed it and had me sit up for a while. The contractions started to fade again, and about 30 minutes later, after I was feeling good again, I was starting to feel them again. And I was like getting to the point where I felt like I didn't have an epidural, other than my legs were so numb. And so she kept having to come in and push the button a bunch of times. It would only help for like 30 minutes, and then it would be like right back to like a 10 on the pain scale. I was like yelling again. And if you guys watch the vlog, you will see a clip of me like in pain when the epidural wasn't working. I also had a peanut ball between my legs because Blake was coming down at an angle, they said, so they were trying to straighten her out, and her head was really swollen. So I think it was around 9 a.m. I was 5 centimeters dilated, by the way. And at this point it was like noon, and my epidural was seriously not working. It was really traumatizing to be in pain like that, like feeling all the pain of labor, but having your legs so numb that you feel paralyzed and you can't move to even get yourself through the contractions. Because before I had the epidural, I was like moving my legs a ton, and that would help me get through the contraction. And then when I had the epidural, I couldn't do that, and I just felt like I was just paralyzed and going through the pain. Like, I couldn't do anything to relieve myself, and that was really traumatic for me. The numb sensation was giving me so much anxiety. I hated it. I felt like either I need to be in pain, take the pain, or I need to take the numbness, and I literally couldn't decide. That's like how anxious it made me feel. I didn't want her to push the button, making me even more numb, but then knowing I'm still gonna be in pain in like 30 minutes again. So I just didn't know what to do, and I was like freaking out, and I was stuck at 5 centimeters. But then around like 2, they checked me again, and I was 7 centimeters, and the baby was at a -1 station, and they said that she was still coming down kind of sideways. They couldn't really figure out if she was even facing the right direction. Long story short, I continued going on with the peanut ball between my legs numb like a dead body, but feeling all my contractions. And I was starting to reach my breaking point. I was like, I don't know how much longer I can do this, where I'm feeling the pain and not progressing because I got stuck at a 7 for a very long time. They checked me at about 4 o'clock and I was still at 7, and throughout that whole time I was in excruciating pain, like feeling all the pain of labor, and I just was like, if there's no point in me feeling this pain, if I'm not going to progress any further, because I just had a gut feeling that I wasn't going to. I knew she was stuck. I knew she was going to be a big baby. Like, I just didn't have a good feeling about it. So by that point, I was like, I just need to get this baby out. If you guys need to do a C-section, because they were talking about C-section, I was like, if that's what you need to do, let's do it, because I can't keep going through this pain for nothing. So my doctor had to do a C-section, so he said, after this, I'll come back in. If you're still stuck at the same thing, then we'll do C-section. While he's gone, I'm like in a lot of pain still, and they come back at about 5:30 or something, and I was still at a 7. I hadn't progressed at all. I was exactly the same, and I was really disappointed. I always wanted to experience a natural delivery, like so badly. I wanted that experience. I'm like getting emotional. I also had the gut feeling that I was gonna end in C-section, so I was at least somewhat mentally prepared for it, but I was so nervous for it. Like, I was seriously really nervous. But anyways, it all happened so fast. They came in, checked me, I was still a 7, and like 5 minutes later I was like signing papers for C-section, and they were getting me prepped and everything. It happened really fast. I was just really nervous because since the epidural wasn't lasting, I was really afraid that I wasn't going to be numb enough during the surgery. I was afraid it was going to wear off really fast or something, and I was going to feel what they were doing, because I know that that does happen. That happened to my mom actually. Because it's just a thing that happens to people in my family, I guess, where we're not easily numbed. When I go to the dentist, I don't get numbed easily either. It takes like way more doses than a normal person to feel numb at all. I'm like telling anesthesiologist, I'm like, please make sure I'm numb. Like, I am not taking well to the epidural. It hasn't worked whatsoever. It only works on my legs. So like, please just make sure they don't cut me open until I'm fully numb. And he was like, yeah, of course, like, we got you. Before I knew it, we were in the C-section room, and Alex obviously couldn't go in right away, and I was just like shaking so bad on the bed because it was a mixture of like adrenaline, nerves, and just labor does that in general. So I had the shakes really, really bad, and I was just so nervous. It felt like a dream. And also I just was so tired. It had been 24 hours at this point. They're getting me all ready and everything like that. Before I know it, Alex is in the room, and they are just giving me like doses of the medicine and being like, can you feel this? Can you feel this? And I'm like, I can feel that perfectly. Like, please don't cut me open yet. And it's almost like they were doubting me at a certain point after they had given me so much medicine. When they would touch me and be like, can you feel this? Can you feel this? They were like pinching my skin. And I was like, yes, yes, like I feel that, like 100% feel that. They were telling me, well, you should be able to feel it, but just the pressure and not like anything else. And I was like, no, like I literally can feel your fingernails pinching my stomach. Like, I can feel it. And I could feel when they were just touching me with their fingernail. And I just felt like they weren't believing me, like they thought I was just nervous or something. Genuinely, I could feel what they were doing, and I was like, no, like I need more medicine. So they gave me more, and it ended up taking like 3 or 4 more doses than a normal C-section. So yeah, that's crazy, but finally I was numb enough, and I was just so scared for the moment they were gonna cut me, because I was like hopefully I'm numb enough, like down in those layers. They cut me. I didn't feel it, thank heavens. And they were trying to get the baby out for like a pretty long time, and Alex and I were just looking at each other, and I was just freaking out, like, what is happening right now? And finally they start tugging, and they're tugging hard. Like, my whole body is like going like this when they're like trying to pull the baby out, and I just hear them saying, oh, I don't know, like I don't know. And I'm like, why are they saying that? Is she okay, or can she not fit through my incision? Like, please tell me they don't have to cut me more, because sometimes they'll have to cut you upwards too if they don't fit in the little incision down below. So I was just so nervous, and then finally I just felt, I guess it would be like kind of the same feeling you'd feel with a vaginal, like it was just like a pressure release, and it felt like, I don't know, like something came out, felt it. It was like a gush, kind of. Ew, I don't know. It felt like something slid out of my abdomen, and they were like, okay, you're gonna hear crying in a second, and I heard her cry, and I just instantly started crying, and I was like looking at Alex, and we were both just crying, like listening to her cry. Blake was born on February 11th at 6:24 p.m. And then they called Alex over to cut the umbilical cord, and I was just sitting there like wondering, like, how much does she weigh? If they couldn't get her out, like, she's got to be big like I thought. So I'm just waiting to hear her weight. I hear a nurse say, oh, she's decent sized. So I'm like, okay, she's freaking gonna be big. I knew it. And I'm just listening for her weight, and all of a sudden I hear 9 pounds 5 ounces. And I was just like, what? Because I thought she'd be big, but I did not expect that big. I was thinking like maybe like in the 8s somewhere, and that would be big for me because I'm a very small person. I was very, very small before I got pregnant. But yeah, 9 pounds 5 ounces. And also my boyfriend is not a big person by any means either. So I'm like, how in the heck did he and I make such a big baby? I don't know. It's still a mystery. But yeah, she was big, and that is why she was never gonna come out naturally. She was stuck, and I was right. My gut instincts were right. In the end, I am glad I did get the incision, or get the C-section. It really wasn't bad at all. And so they stitched me up and took me to recovery. Oh, and I got to hold her, by the way, while I was still in the C-section room. While they were stitching me up, I got to hold her on my chest. I just have really, really bad luck. So things kept happening to me that don't happen to everyone. I started getting this extreme pain in my shoulder, and I literally felt like I couldn't hold her because she was really big, and I was trying to hold her with the arm that had the hurt shoulder. So I'm holding her, and she's crying and looking at me. And then they take her with Alex, and I get medicine for my shoulder. They gave me a shot of something to help with the pain, and they took me to recovery. I got to hold her and do skin to skin, and you guys, it is insane what your body does, because I had the shakes so badly, and they're telling me like skin to skin will help, and as soon as they put her on my chest, like skin to skin, my shakes went away. It's crazy. Like I had them so bad, and then it just instantly went away. And I was just holding her, and I was so in love, and she had chubby cheeks. And oh, I can't. She was just so cute, and I was just staring at her eyes, and I just couldn't believe that that baby came out of me. And I mean, I was so afraid for her to be so big, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because it was just her, you know. She wouldn't be Blake if she wasn't a chub. So yeah, I was just obsessed, and Alex and I were just staring at her, and we were there for like an hour in the recovery area. And then they took us up to our recovery room, and everything was good, and I recovered really well. The only thing that sucked was they don't let you shower for 24 hours after your C-section, and I had already been there for 24 hours, like going through labor and covered in like all these fluids. Ew, I know. But I just wanted to shower so bad. I smelled so bad like the night I had her, and I was like holding her. I was like, oh my gosh, I smell like a dirty, stinky like man. I smelled like BO, and I just felt disgusting. My hair was greasy, and I couldn't take a shower for 24 hours later. But yeah, so our hospital stay was pretty good. I was in a lot of pain, obviously, but it really wasn't anything I couldn't handle, and I was totally fine a week later. Like I wasn't in any more pain. Before that, Alex did have to help me up and stuff like that, and it was hard to pick up the baby and like in the hospital and stuff. But yeah, and now that I'm 6 weeks postpartum. My incision looks amazing. It's really, really tiny, and you know, C-section really wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. I was so afraid to have one and so against having one, but now that I did, I would do it again. If I do have another baby, like, I would do it again. Oh yeah, also, while I was in labor, the baby was so big that she was damaging my bladder, and my catheter, the pee in it was like red. Like, I had so much blood coming from my bladder, and it was really bad. They said it was okay, but they just said that the baby was really big and like pushing on my bladder too hard to where it was causing trauma to my bladder. But it all went back to normal. I'm not bleeding in any way now. I'm like totally good. So yeah, but that was crazy. Okay, I'll show you guys baby Blake.
No, I will show.
Oh, there's the baby. Yeah, so here she is. And she has a rash right now, if you can see it on her face. She has it on her whole body. Yeah, if you guys want to know about that, just go watch our vlogs. We've been vlogging today, and we're going to be vlogging this whole weekend. So yeah, Grace and Alex channel. Grace, Alex, Blake. And
Yeah.
Manji's down here too. My Chunkamunk. That's her nickname. Yeah, here's her body. She's so sweet. So yeah, that is my labor and delivery story. If you guys want to hear about my stay at the hospital or like my first week at home or anything like that, I can do a separate video on all of that. So just let me know. But yeah, that is all for this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Sometimes I need some